Why have we?
Good Sunday morning, everyone.
And what are you going to do to us?
Sunday Morning Futures. I'm Maria Bartiromo. Thanks so much for joining us. Today, President Trump's agenda at home and abroad, managing peace through strength overseas and tough love here at home, with tariffs sparking new domestic manufacturing. The president expected to embark on a cross-country trip to tout his economic policy wins as the big, beautiful bill takes effect in the new year, with tax cuts for citizens and new expensing for business, all expected to spark growth. Coming up, reaction from one of America's leading chief executives, JP Chase Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon, on investing in national defense, the 2026 economy and AI, and Jack Smith's Arctic frost investigation. Plus, a manufacturing mecca with energy production power. President Trump's first stop on his economic trip, Pennsylvania. Senator Dave McCormick is here with reaction. Then satisfaction after the mobs came after this Democrat congressman hard when he spoke truth about Biden's wide-open border.
I believe in legal migration. I don't believe in illegal migration. And as we've said in the past, if you have 100 people that ask for asylum, 10 to 12% are going to be accepted, and the other 90 to 88% are going to be rejected. So why are we letting everybody in?
Did that tough talk on the border bring him an indictment? Texas Democrat Congressman Henry Cuellar on President Trump's full and unconditional pardon for him and his wife. Coming up. Also ahead, former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy caught up in Jack Smith's dragnet with subpoenas sent to AT&T for his phone records. The former California congressman and Speaker of the House lives to talk about it with details for us coming up. It's all right here, right now on Sunday Morning Futures. And we begin this Sunday morning with America's economic security is national security. The Trump administration releasing its annual National Security Strategy Report, highlighting threats from China and Russia, while also leveling criticism at NATO allies, including Europe, which the administration says will be unrecognizable in the coming 20 years if the current open migration policy continues to erode national identities. The report questioning, quote, whether certain European countries will have economies and militaries strong enough to remain reliable allies. Many of these nations are currently doubling down on their present path, unquote. The president using tariffs, defense deals, and personal diplomacy abroad, while pushing tax cuts, deregulation, and a manufacturing and energy renaissance here at home. This upcoming week, the president is expected to begin an economic road trip to tout his affordability and economic policy successes as corporate America increasingly partners with the Trump administration on issues over national security. And joining me now from the Reagan National Defense Forum in Simi Valley, California, at the Reagan Library, is the chairman and CEO of JP Chase, Jamie Dimon. Jamie, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Maria, I'm thrilled to be here.
And it's great to be able to talk with you from the Reagan Defense Forum about this big news that your company released recently, that you've launched a $1.5 trillion security and resiliency initiative to boost critical industries. Tell me a little about what your objective is here and what industries you deem as most important for the U.S. economy that you'd like to invest in.
Right. So, it's become pretty obvious, particularly since the invasion of Ukraine, that national security is critical, not just for us, but for a lot of countries. And if you had any illusion that the world was going to be peaceful for the rest of our lives, hopefully it was shattered. And, at that point, people realized, I heard from military officers, I heard from companies, we didn't have enough production capability to make the bombs that we needed to ship. We had rare earths. You've already heard about the rare earth problem. We rely on China. And it's not just about China, but we rely on single parties for things we need for F-35s and nuclear submarines. And we rely on China for something like 90% of the ingredients go into our pharmaceuticals and 90% of our penicillin. And again, it's not all about China. It's about the United States needs to have security and resiliency about things for security that we can rely on. This year we said, what can JP Morgan do? So it's literally, and we broke it out into 27 very detailed categories. So it's rare earths, of which there are many, by the way. It's lithium. It's the medical ingredients. It's drones. It's satellites. It's cyber. It's even education in some cases about what we need to do to get the workforce. In some cases, just having the backup resiliency.
And Jamie, of course, this weekend at the Defense Forum, China is going to be one of the key topics there. I want to get your take on how you're managing things, of course, as one of the most important banks in the world, J.P. Morgan, certainly in America. How do you manage the China threat?
Now, if you look at what we're doing in China, we bank, I think, 3,000 multinationals in China. So these are a lot of companies, some of whom are going to be here, and so we kind of have clients, this network of clients. We try to be very careful, but, we're not going to violate American national security policy.
Would you walk away from a deal, from an IPO, if you felt that that company was assisting the People's Liberation Army?
Well, it depends what you mean by assisting the People's Liberation Army, but the answer is, would we walk away from a deal? Absolutely. We don't have to chase any deal or any client, something like that. But then you have to define assisting. Is that food, sneakers, or is it military equipment? So if it's assisting military equipment, absolutely. And presumably that would be on the sanction list of the United States government. If it's something that's kind of innocuous, no, we're not going to walk away from that company. If the United States government decided that we should, then we would. And I should point out, our government is fully engaging with China. And, I appreciate that. They should engage. We shouldn't be afraid of them. I'm not afraid of China. I think what we need to do is make sure we're secure.
And Jamie, obviously, national security is economic security and vice versa. I want to get your take on what your sense is of the 2026 economy, what to expect in the year ahead. What is your sense of the broader macro story for the year ahead, Jamie?
So I'll give you short-term and long-term, though. In the short run, it looks like the American consumer is doing fine, is chugging along, companies are making profits, stock markets are high, and that could easily continue. There are a little small negatives, like jobs are weakening, but just a little bit. Inflation is there and maybe not going down.
We're just coming off of the longest shutdown in history. And, of course, the Securities and Exchange Commission was shut down. I wonder what kind of an impact that had on IPOs, on capital markets, businesses for you.
Yeah. So, first of all, I just want to say the shutdowns are stupid. They damage America. They shouldn't happen. And we got to figure a way not to have these things happen. You can blame Democrats or Republicans. Their intramurals are damaging 300 million Americans. And I think that's just dead wrong for any reason. So what did it do with IPOs? Well, IPOs basically stopped for, 30 days or whatever it was. But the markets are wide open. The IPO backlog is huge. The debt backlog is huge. The M&A backlog is huge. Yes, they're all going to come, but I'll give you a proviso. Pipelines are like accordions. They open and close. So whenever people ask us, the investor community asks us, what's the pipeline? I say, we'll tell you the pipeline, but don't assume that it closes. If the markets get south, if we go into recession, those things can close pretty quickly.
Jamie, what's your sense of jobs? Because here I think there's a little more nuance to the story. It's not just about the macro story. Now you've got to look at artificial intelligence and the fact that AI is creating efficiencies to the extent that it is cutting jobs. What is your plan to ensure that Americans are ready for this new revolution that's underway with AI?
Yeah. So I think before you do AI, jobs have gotten a little weaker, wages have gotten a little weaker. And when you talk to businesses, they're going to be a little more cautious hiring. That's not because of AI. That's just because they want to do more with less, and they look at their order books, et cetera. And look, I don't think AI is going to dramatically reduce jobs like unbelievably next year. And for the most part, AI is going to do great stuff for mankind, like tractors did, like fertilizers did, like vaccines did. They'll save lives. We'll be working. Maybe one day we'll be working less hard, but having wonderful lives. So it'll cure a lot of cancers. It'll have composite materials. Now, of course, it needs to be properly regulated. There are downsides to AI, just like there are to airplanes, pharmaceuticals, cars. All things get used by bad people. So assuming that the government figured out some way to put guardrails around AI, but it will eliminate jobs. That doesn't mean that people won't have other jobs. My advice to people would be, critical thinking. Learn skills, learn your EQ, learn how to be good at a meeting, how to communicate, how to write. You'll have plenty of jobs. And if it does happen too fast for society, which is possible, we can't assimilate all those people that quickly. Like if you look at, what happened on farms and the internet and electricity, it took a while. This may be a little bit longer, and it'll be a little harder to assimilate people. If we can't, we, government, and we, the companies, society, should look at how do we phase it in a way that we don't damage a lot of people. Like we should have done a little bit more on trade assistance years ago when you had a town that got damaged by the closure of a plant. And that you can do. You can, retrain people, relocate people, income assistance, early retirement. And the next job may be a better job, but they have to learn how to do the job. And as you know, skills are, you can earn quite a bit of money with skills. If you look at this year, you have a huge amount of construction that needs to take place. And to do that construction, you need roads and trucks and drivers. You need servers, you need fiber, you need all that. So it's going to cause probably more jobs in the short run in total.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the fact that we're going to need more electricians and plumbers and, like you said, those trade schools. But, Jamie, I guess what I'm asking is, are we going to see any return on investment on all this money anytime soon? I mean, Jensen Huang told me that we're talking about trillions of dollars every year going into the build-out of data centers. I mean, look at all these data centers that we have actually seen built in America. I mean, at this point, we've got about 5,000 data centers that have built for AI. When you add up all this money, all this trillions of dollars, where's the return on investment, Jamie?
So I think I heard, I haven't read it yet, but I heard we did a research report about how much. It's $5 trillion, and that includes everything: the data centers, the servers, the chips, the fiber. It doesn't necessarily include the power plant or the transmission lines, and then we were going through today, like where's the money going to come from? Public, private credit, specialized type of finance, asset-backed securities. There will be big winners. You remember out of the internet, you got Google and Facebook and Amazon and tons of others and whole new technologies. But it took a while for some other things to come in, like the iPhone or something. So here, it will eventually pay off.
Look, Jamie, before you go, I've got to ask you about the special counsel, the former special counsel, Jack Smith, and that Arctic frost investigation, Jamie, because we had Devin Nunes on this program, former chairman of the Intelligence Committee, who said your bank was subpoenaed to give his bank records up, and he was upset about it. Here's what he said on this program just a few weeks ago. Watch this.
When the Arctic frost went after our bank records at Trump Media, that's inexplicable because we didn't exist. So what reason did they have to go after us? And I've seen Jamie Dimon and others at JP Morgan say this over and over again, that they don't debank people for political reasons. Well, then why the hell did you debank Trump Media?
Jamie, what do you want to say about that? Did you send over the bank records of Devin Nunes or Trump supporters to the special counsel when he wanted that information?
People have to grow up here, okay, and stop making up things and stuff like that. So, and I can't talk about an individual account. We do not debank people's religious or political affiliations. We do debank them. They have religious and political affiliation. We debank people who are Democrats. We debank people who are Republicans. We've debanked different religious folks. Never was that for that reason. And that's number one. Number two is I don't like debanking people. We live under very strict rules and regulations and requirements, and to protect the country, and we have to report things to the government. We're required to report things to the government. I can't even tell you when we do it, because I'm not going to tell you that either. And so I want to change these rules. I actually applaud the Trump administration, who's trying to say the debanking's bad and we should change the rules. Well, damn it, I've been asking to change the rules now for 15 years. So change the rules. And, and that's why a lot of this stuff takes place. It is really customer unfriendly. And, we're debanking people because of suspected things or negative media or all these various things. So, and the last thing, which is really important, we don't give information to the government just because they ask. We're subpoenaed. We're required by court to give it to the government. And I've been following subpoenas with this administration, the last administration, the administration before that, and the one before that. And I don't agree with a lot of it. The government does a lot of things that get angry at banks. So let's just take a deep breath and fix the problems as opposed to blame someone who's put in that position. So, and we've been quite clear about this. We've given recommendations to the government how they can fix it, how we can change the rules and regulations to dramatically reduce reporting and debanking and things like that. And I would tell the government, if we see something that might possibly be bad, we'll report it to you and you decide. Why do we have to decide? And that's the position we're put in.
I mean, as someone who's covered global business for so many years and now covers politics as well as policy so closely, I have a problem with, the special counsel taking advantage of corporate America to use corporate America to do their dirty work. Because it wasn't just the banks. It was also the telecom companies. Don't forget, they sent subpoenas to Verizon and AT&T to get phone records of Trump supporters. I mean, a political witch hunt. So that's why I think our viewers, want to understand how this happens.
Yeah, well, that is not me. That's your courts and government and stuff like that. But the government, Democratic and Republican governments have come after us both. So let's not act like this is just one side doing this. This has been going on for a long time, and we should stop, militarizing the government that kind of way.
And my thanks to Jamie Dimon. Join me tomorrow morning on Mornings with Maria, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern on Fox Business for more of my exclusive interview with the chairman and CEO of JPMorgan Chase. We'll talk from the Reagan Defense Forum on the economy, markets, and why JPMorgan today has more employees in Texas than in New York. But first, President Trump expected to kick off his economic road trip this Tuesday in Pennsylvania. Coming up, Pennsylvania Senator Dave McCormick on the president's policies and messaging on affordability and jobs. Stay with us.
Distinguished guests, the Chief of Protocol of the United States, Ambassador Monica Crowley.
Well, good evening, Mr. President. It's such an honor to be here with you tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Cabinet, distinguished guests, I am Ambassador Monica Crowley, Chief of Protocol of the United States, and it's my distinct honor to welcome all of you to the State Department to celebrate the extraordinary talent, vision, and artistic achievements of the fantastic 48th Kennedy Center honorees, living legends, all of you. We gather tonight in the magnificent Benjamin Franklin Room, which is one of our most distinctive venues for diplomatic and ceremonial events. And we are so delighted tonight to share it all here with you on this very special occasion. We have a terrific program for you, so just please relax, enjoy the show. And it is now my honor to welcome to the stage our spectacular Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and our fantastic President of the Kennedy Center, Ambassador Rick Grinnell.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President. Welcome to the State Department. We love to have you here in this beautiful ballroom, and we're very excited about it. Of course, it's not nearly as big as one we're going to have in about a year and a half for the country, and but thank you for being here tonight. And it's an extraordinary honor to be here with all of you, to welcome you here to this room and to this place. One of the great American exports is our culture and our talent. It inspires the world, and tonight we honor 4 honorees, 5 when you include a group as well, who have been such internationally given America such prominence. They have represented our country well. It is one of the great things that we have done. It's one of the things that people don't talk about enough. They call it soft power. But what it really means is the influence of our culture and the influence of our talented people and how it inspires people around the world. In many cases, the first thing and people learn about our country is through our culture, through our entertainment, be it our movies or our television or our music or our musicals or our bands or our actors. And so we are grateful and honored to be able to host this event tonight on the eve of tomorrow's ceremonies and tomorrow's celebration of this incredible American talent, and to partner, as has been done for many years, with the Kennedy Center, which is under extraordinary new leadership. You guys are doing a phenomenal job, both in fundraising and it's something the President, as Ambassador Grinnell will tell you shortly, has really made a priority, and that is to restore it to a place of greatness. where the beauty of American culture, where things that are exhibited to the world, and obviously here in the city as well. So it's my honor now to turn it over to Ambassador Grinnell, who will tell you more about all the exciting things that are happening at the Kennedy Center. So thank you so much for being here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to host this week. Thank you.
Secretary Rubio, Marco, my friend, thank you so much for this occasion. We're ecstatic to be here. It is true that President Trump not only helped the Kennedy Center, but I have to tell you, he saved the Kennedy Center. From the moment I arrived and the finances were a mess, despite whatever the media says, I promise you, we had no money in the bank. We were paying staff with debt reserves. It was
Fox Business Friday, with expectations of 4% productivity and economic growth of between 3 and 4% in the first half of the new year, as the big beautiful bill and its new tax policy take effect. But even with some $18 trillion of new investment into America on President Trump's watch this year, and inflation plummeting from Joe Biden's 40-year highs, Americans are feeling financially stressed, according to recent polling. And the Democrats are jumping on the affordability theme heading into the midterm elections. President Trump is set to travel the country throughout the coming weeks to communicate how his policies are reining in inflation and creating opportunities and economic growth. The president's first stop will be in Pennsylvania on Tuesday. And joining me now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is Pennsylvania Senator Dave McCormick. Senator, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning.
Are you expecting to be with the president on Tuesday? And what are you expecting the president's messages to be?
Well, I'm hoping to be with him, and I was just in Pennsylvania the last 3 days, in that part of the Pennsylvania, the northeastern part. And listen, I think the message is that we inherited a train wreck from the Biden administration, out of control inflation, an enormous regulatory state, real wage growth hadn't kept up. And we've made a lot of progress in the last 12 months with the president's agenda. Inflation's about half of what it was on average during the Biden administration. Real wage growth exceeds the inflation numbers. And you've got all sorts of things that we did right out of the gate, which is putting money in the pockets of working families, whether it's the child care tax credit or no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. So we've made a lot of progress, but there's a lot more work to do. And I think the president will lay out that agenda and how all the policies that he's put in place are going to help working families, and there's more to come, particularly in deregulation and in energy dominance.
Yeah, and I want to talk about what's to come, but let me stay on what your expectations are in the first half of the new year, because you heard Kevin Hassett. He's talking about he said, if we get 3% growth, I'll be disappointed. He's talking about 3 to 4% economic growth in the first half, largely because of the impact of the big, beautiful bill. What do you believe to be the most impactful from that legislation in the new year?
Well, first, I think of the economy as a sailboat, and we got wind at our backs with the big, beautiful bill, the accelerated depreciation, the money going into people's pockets, but also the certainty. You know, CEOs like certainty that allows them to invest. The second thing is all this trillions of dollars of investment that have come into the country, into Pennsylvania, whether it's Nippon or Hanwha or all the money that's coming in for AI and energy infrastructure. That's a huge boon. And then the final thing is deregulation. I think that's just starting to have an impact. We're going to see, I think, the biggest deregulatory agenda since Reagan's first term in 1981. All those things are going to push us forward. I think Kevin Hassett is right that we're going to see a big pop in growth, and I think that's going to be great for working families across Pennsylvania.
Yeah, and Jamie Dimon mentioned that. We're going to play that portion of regulation and the impact of all of that tomorrow on Mornings with Maria on Fox Business. But I think it's really interesting to see President Trump target different areas of the economy. This most favored nation status with healthcare prices was very powerful. The fact that he was able to get pharmaceutical companies to agree to take their prices down and break into that bureaucracy there. What are you expecting from the Obamacare subsidies? They're expiring in just a couple of weeks. And what are you expecting in terms of the cost of health care in the new year?
Well, that step by the president on drugs was fantastic. And when I campaigned last year, that was one of the many things on the minds of Pennsylvanians is how outrageous those prices were. But listen, we got to start with the Affordable Care Act. 15 years ago, it had 3 goals: better quality, increased access, and lower cost. It's been a miserable, cataclysmic failure on all fronts. We are 3 times more expensive per person than any healthcare system in the world. 25 million people don't have access, and the quality is very mixed, including one of the highest morbidity rates in the world for a developed country. So it's been a disaster. And the Democrats, and by the way, it's a disaster that now we and Republicans and Democrats have to work on to fix together for the American people. The Democrats are engaged in theater right now. They're putting forward this week a 3-year extension of those subsidies from COVID. What that essentially means is a family that is making $500,000 a year continues to get a COVID subsidy. It's automatic enrollment, which is a giveaway to the insurance companies and allows for fraud. So I'm not in favor of that, and I think it's a ridiculous political stunt. I do think we need to address this issue, particularly for working families. So I'd be in favor of some sort of limited extension that reformed those subsidies and help us get to the point where we can do the work that's required to really reform our healthcare system. It's one of my biggest fears, and I think it's the thing that Pennsylvanians feel lurking over their shoulder is this enormous risk and this enormous cost of healthcare.
Well, you say that the Democrats are involved in theater in terms of this issue. I find it really compelling, the fact that President Trump came into office and all he talked about was getting prices down, from 40-year highs of inflation, and yet the Democrats have been able to grab around this issue of affordability, this new buzzword, going into the midterm elections and act as if it's their issue and not the Republicans' issue. They're better marketers, obviously.
Well, listen, we inherited a train wreck from the policies of the Biden administration. It's going to take some time to unwind those. But make no mistake, by any metric, the economy has gotten better for working families over the last 12 months. And it's also true we have a lot more work to do. And I think the president feels that. He's willing to shake things up, whether it's negotiating these deals with pharmaceutical companies or really going at some of the true costs of inflation. And we need to deal with that to help the working families of Pennsylvania that put him and me into office.
Well, we should point out that we will also likely see lower interest rates in the new year as the president names a new chairman of the Federal Reserve. Senator, we look forward to seeing you with the president on Tuesday in Pennsylvania. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Dave McCormick. Quick break, and then President Trump issues a pardon for one of Joe Biden's most vocal critics of his open border policy, and he's a Democrat. Texas Democrat Congressman Henry Cuellar says he was punished for his stance on the wide open border. He will join me on Biden's Department of Justice, targeting him and his wife while sounding the alarm over the millions of illegal border crossers. That's next. Stay with us.
Awful. Zip up, and on top of that, the deferred maintenance was criminal over the years. I brought President Trump over. I showed him. He's an expert on building, if you don't know that. And immediately said, what do you think? What are we supposed to do with this? Are we supposed to pour more money into this? And I said, sir, I got to be honest with you. Our engineers, our building people have said, this is so far past, we need to tear it down and start over. And the president said, nah, I can give you some money. And he left the Kennedy Center. By the time he got back to the White House, he had called Lindsey Graham and Russ Vought, and he said, I'm going to give $250 million to save the Kennedy Center, and it's going to be in the big, beautiful bill. And that's exactly what he did. He delivered, and he saved the Kennedy Center. It's never a big story when things are neglected, but the Kennedy Center was neglected. It needs to be a place of bipartisanship. It needs to be a place that we come together and we celebrate together, and we don't care who you voted for president. You sit, you watch amazing shows like Les Mis. We have totally turned the place around because President Trump said from the beginning, change the programming to common sense programming that everybody wants, and corporations will come. Mr. President, it's exactly what happened, and I'm here to tell you, we have the biggest haul we've ever made for the Kennedy Center honors. We just brought in $23 million for the Kennedy Center honors tomorrow night. That is almost double what they did last year, and that is all because people want to come. President Trump makes it a priority, and he is the one who gave us the vision to change the programming, raise the money, bring in the corporate dollars. Now, I have to be honest with you, I'm really thankful that Delta, Boeing, and CBS are here because you are our top donors. Thank you for all of your work. And let me finish by saying also, Tiffany's, thank you very much for redesigning our Kennedy Center honors. And if you haven't seen them yet, you're about to. They're spectacular. And this is the first year that Tiffany's decided to step in. And we want to thank Tiffany's for the beautiful medals, awards that they have given us. So thank you very much. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you. What a great group this.
What has to happen to you? And how long is it going to take all of you to understand that if we all stood up together and said, no, get back in your cage, you can't fool us any longer, we know what the law is, we know who you are, we know what you're trying to do, we know that you are in subversion, executing treason, and it's over. And ladies and gentlemen, what would it take to make you understand that if we all did that in concert, it would really be over? And no one would be injured, not even with a tiny scratch. Because they're cowards. They wouldn't even think of attempting to overcome a whole people who stood together. But you see, I know that won't happen. I know human nature, and I have studied history well. Most people are cowards, have always.
And that's President Trump on why he issued a full and unconditional pardon for Texas Democrat Congressman Henry Cuellar and his wife Imelda, after both were indicted last year by Biden's Department of Justice on 14 counts of bribery, conspiracy, and money laundering. The couple has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing and have accused the Biden administration of weaponizing the Justice Department. Cuellar, whose district sits right on the Rio Grande, which was one of the busiest regions with illegal crossers. Take a look at these pictures. He was one of Joe Biden's fiercest critics over the former president's open border policy, which saw more than 10 million people cross the nation's borders illegally. President Trump will say it's 20 million, in addition to millions of gotaways and hundreds of others who were actually on the U.S.'s terrorist watch list. Joining me now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the man himself, Texas Congressman Henry Cuellar. Congressman, thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on the pardon.
Thank you so much, and it's so good talking to you again.
And do you believe that you were indicted because of your criticism of Biden's open border?
Absolutely. The president was right, and I, now looking at all the evidence and looking at everything, definitely I feel that I was weaponized. You know, they used the department to go after myself and my family. And I'll tell you something, Murray, if they want to come after me because I was a critic about open borders, that's one thing. But you don't bring the family in. You just don't do that. You don't, as a prosecutor, you just don't do that type of situation.
Well, okay, I want to talk about the weaponization because this audience knows all about the Democrats' weaponization of government. But first, let's hit on what they accused you of. The Justice Department under Joe Biden said that you were acting as a foreign agent to advance the interests of the Azerbaijani government. Federal authorities indicted you and your wife in May of 2024 on 14 counts, including bribery, conspiracy, and money laundering. You've consistently denied any wrongdoing, but tell me what went on between you and the Azerbaijani government.
Yeah, look, let me say this, first of all, we're innocent, and we have looked at all the evidence that got provided through discovery. We were even allowed to see the grand jury testimony. That doesn't happen very frequently, and we saw that, and not a single person that testified, and I'll emphasize this, not a single person said there was a quid pro quo. In fact, they failed at showing that quid pro quo. And Maria, they even went and did a sting operation, a separate sting operation to try to bribe me, and that failed. And what they did there was wrong. So again, no quid pro quo from any of the evidence, from any of the individuals, and therefore they even attempted a sting operation where they were trying to entrap me, and that failed.
Wow. Entrapment, bribery. Congressman, tell me specifically, who tried to bribe you? You mean Biden's DOJ tried to bribe you?
Yes, they did. We got all the testimony, the 302s, the sting operation. They set up a false company, false account. They took out money. We saw all this. They took out the money, and they said this money was to bribe me. They try to use this money. They talked to my DC staff. My DC staff told them no, there was nothing there. So they actually returned the money back to the account because they couldn't bribe me. So the Biden administration, they tried to entrap me and try to bribe me, and that failed. And this is very significant because one more thing, everything came in from the DOJ in DC. Everything came from the DOC office there. The local office, that is the one in Houston, never got enough. And from my sources, they did not get involved because they felt there was not a case, and they said, we're not going to get involved. The Houston office said, we're not going to get involved. It's all the DOJ people in Washington, D.C. There's a lot more. And I have talked to Jim Jordan, and I've asked Jim Jordan, I want to sit down with y'all because I think y'all need to investigate those prosecutors, and you need to investigate their supervisors also.
And of course, that's what the judiciary and Jim Jordan is doing, investigating all of this. Look, Congressman, if this is true, this is not the first time that the Democrats have used dirty political tricks against their political rivals. I mean, you can go back to the Russia collusion made-up story by Hillary Clinton's team, to two impeachments of Trump, 90-plus indictments against Trump, a raid on Mar-a-Lago. So all of this shows you that you've got leadership in the Democrat Party who will stoop at anything. Lows, they don't care how low to go to take you down. Why are you still part of the Democrat Party? Have you considered switching parties?
Look, I'm a Democrat. I'm probably one of the most, if not the most, bipartisan Democrat. And as I told some of my Republican friends on the House floor, I vote better than some of the Republicans in the Republican caucus, and they agree with me. I just feel that, I follow the words of President LBJ, where he said many years ago, I'm an American, I'm a Texan, and I'm a Democrat, in that order. And I think anybody that puts party before their country is doing a disservice to their country.
Okay, but President Trump is out with a new Truth Social today on your decision to run again as a Democrat, and the president is saying, oh, well, next time, no more Mr. Nice Guy. He's talking about the fact that you are going to continue to work with the same radical left Democrats. What do you want to say about the president's Truth Social this morning?
Well, again, let me just say this. I was at church this morning with my wife. I prayed for the president. I prayed for his family. And I prayed for the presidency, because if the president succeeds, the country succeeds. And again, as probably the most bipartisan individual, I don't vote party. I vote for what's right for the country. And in fact, when I got that raid by the Biden administration, they did it 40 days before a primary, where the far left had spent we're spending total about $20 million that we know of on that. So they did this right before that. So again, I am a conservative Democrat, But I will work with the president. I've reached out to his administration. I told him, name the folks, Tom Homan, Christie, other folks. I say, hey, can we sit down? I'd love to sit down and see where we can find common ground. I sit on defense appropriations. I sit on homeland appropriations. And if I can work and find common ground, then I certainly want to do that.
Well, with all due respect, did you vote for the government shutdown? Okay, we've spoken with John Fetterman many times on this program, and he, like yourself, is moderate and in the middle and does not vote about party, but votes for the American people and votes for the issues that matter. So I ask you, how much pressure do your colleagues put on you? Fetterman told me that even though he is voting for the American people and doing his job, he feels, quote unquote, isolated. How do you feel? How does the Democrat leadership treat you now that you've been talking about the open border, have been friendly with President Trump?
Well, listen, do I have some on the far left that are not happy with me? Of course not. But I think the general Democrat caucus and I, we get along. But they know that I'm an independent voice. They know, I was one of the 6 that opened up. Voted to Democrats have voted up to open up the government. I sit in appropriations. I do want to say that the CR that was put out there, I think it was 91 pages, 65 pages, didn't have anything to do with the CR or appropriations. I just want to have an input on appropriations.
Of course. Congressman, it's great to have you this morning. We'll be following your work, and we so appreciate your leadership and courage, sir. Thank you.
Look forward to being with you again. Have a good morning.
And to you, Henry Cuellar joining us. Quick break, and then former special counsel Jack Smith is set to testify behind closed doors in front of the House Judiciary Committee about his investigation into President Trump and his allies, along with his subpoenas sent out to get phone and bank data of Trump allies. Kevin McCarthy, the 55th Speaker of the House, was among the lawmakers that was tracked. In Jack Smith's wide web, he will join me with the reaction and the details. Stay with us.
Your team is doing very well, Bob. Good quarterback, good coach. It always helps. Having a good coach and a good quarterback is a very good thing, historically. I want to thank Secretary Marco Rubio, who's my friend and a very talented man who works very hard, and his wonderful wife, Jeanette, for hosting us this evening as we... Thank you, Jeanette. Great job. As we celebrate the 2025 Kennedy Center's honorees, and they are great honorees. Sylvester Stallone, there he is, look at him. He got stuck in traffic, but he made it. He wasn't going to miss this under any. We heard he was walking up. I said, okay, now we can start. You look great. Thank you both very much. Jennifer, thank you very much. George Strait. Thank you, George. King of Country. That's great. Gloria Gaynor. Gloria. Fantastic job. You look so well. Thank you very much, Gloria. The legendary Michael Crawford. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. That's some job. Thank you very much, Mrs. Crawford, for being here with your 2 beautiful daughters. Really an honor to have you. I don't want to say how many times I've seen you in Phantom, but you know, when you have a great artist, it's true with paintings, it's true with music, it's true with dance. Every time you see it, it gets better. And you see things you've never seen before, but I've seen you many times, and there's never been anybody like you. Thank you very much, Michael. Congratulations. And the truly legendary rock band Kiss. Thank you, fellas. Thank you. That's great. Thank you very much. And this is really much, really look at it, pure talent, a lot of talent, as has ever been assembled under one roof. We've done something that they've never done before, and I'll be doing something that hasn't been done before. The President of the United States is hosting at the request of a certain television network. And I'm doing it because I feel it's very important that we all get out and do something. And if that can make a difference, that's tremendous. But we have such wonderful people, and I don't mind doing it. But these are some of the greatest of all time, and congratulations to all of you. And thank you very much to Tiffany and Company. They've really done a beautiful job with the medals. And I want to thank you, beautiful families, every one of you. You brought large numbers of your families here, and we appreciate that. And they appreciate you, I can tell you. A very special thanks as well to our terrific Kennedy Center Board of Trustees, along with Executive Director Rick Grinnell. The Board of Trustees has been amazing. It's got to be the hottest board, or I don't know, the Supreme Court is pretty hot. I always say the Supreme Court, the U.S. Senate, the NFL Owners Committee, I think that's pretty good too. But I think the board of the Kennedy Center is turning out to be, we have so many people that want to get on. I have so many enemies now because they want to be on the board. And
what appears to be almost half the stinking Republicans in Congress getting their phone logs, and a bunch of other Americans.
And that's the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, with me on Mornings with Maria on Fox Business Thursday on his subpoena for former special counsel Jack Smith to testify behind closed doors about his investigation into President Trump and Trump's supporters. Among those who were caught up in the wide net cast by Smith was my next guest, former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Smith allegedly sought the personal cell phone records of McCarthy from AT&T, which they ultimately said they did not turn over, but they actually did. Meanwhile, a top federal court official is defending Judge James Boasberg's decision to issue gag orders that hid subpoenas in connection with the FBI's Arctic Frost probe. The official, Robert Conrad Jr., said in a letter to Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley that Washington's chief federal judge was likely unaware that the subpoenas were directed at members of Congress. Joining me now with more on all of this is the man himself, the 55th Speaker of the House, former California Congressman Kevin McCarthy. Speaker, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Great to see you, Maria.
And it was just a little while, was it a couple of weeks after you became the Speaker of the House, the highest Republican in the nation, okay, the Speaker of the House, was it just a few days later or weeks later after you were sworn in that you were actually tracked by Democrats?
Yeah, we're just learning. The weaponization went beyond just trying to go after President Trump. It went after all Republicans. And remember, when they went after my phone number, of my phone log, they didn't tell AT&T it was my phone. They didn't tell me. They didn't tell anybody else. And they just went to try to find all. They went much further and longer duration than they asked for the senators' phones as well. Now we're finding out they also went after Jim Jordan's phone. They would go after any political enemy they thought was out there. It's the true weaponization of government. And we're just now getting this information. And when we first found out about it, thanks to Senator Grassley and Senator Johnson and what Jim Jordan has been working on, AT&T said, no, they didn't provide my phone number, but they did give the phone logs we find out now. But the first question is, what crime did all these Republicans actually propose to have committed? Just being a Republican? Being the leader in the House? The Speaker of the House? That's what they wanted to go after my phone log for?
That's unbelievable. And I know that at some point AT&T said, no, we didn't do what Verizon did. We pushed back and said, look, we're not going to get involved in this. But you're saying, in fact, they did send over the phone records of your number, even though they didn't know it was your number.
At the very beginning, they said they did not do that because they thought they caught themselves. Because normally if someone went after someone's phone log, they'd have to show proof. There'd have to be some reason why you broke some crime. They wanted to investigate you. And they'd say your name. Jack Smith on purpose would not say my name, just give my phone number out. And as we're watching from the judge, there was no indication why to go after me. Simply that I was the leader of the Republican Party. I had become Speaker, the highest elected at the time for Republicans, and they wanted to go after my phone log.
Unbelievable.
Why? They wanted to look at every constituent that called me, every leader that I talked to, every other Republican or Democrat I talked to, or any foreign leader I talked to. They thought they had a right to try to track us and understand whatever we were doing. First, let's find out why Jack would do that. The weaponization of taking this government and going after business to go and spy on Americans.
Yeah. Kevin, real quick, do you believe this is the right forum for Jack Smith? I mean, how is he going to explain himself? Is it right that he should be behind private doors, or do you provide? I know in a public hearing, each lawmaker only has 5 minutes, so it's limited.
Well, I want to get to the information. So if it's behind closed doors, I trust in Jim Jordan. Let's get all that information, but let's not this be the only hearing. Let's bring a number of hearings out, but we've got to get all the information because we know now that the Biden administration tried to hide everything.
Unbelievable. All right, let's take a short break. I want to continue this conversation, and I also want to get your take on this affordability issue. We're talking with the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. We'll be right back on Sunday Morning Futures.
Look at this broccoli.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas, and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. Speaking at the Reagan National Defense
I'm sort of saying you can't have it, can't get any more. But Rick, you've been fantastic, and Ambassador Sergio Gore, who's now going to India. Good luck. We may never see you again. 1.5 billion people. Think of that. 1.5 billion. Can you handle that, Sergio? I think you can. You can handle anything. But you're going to be dealing with a very special leader, as you know, a friend of mine, and you're going to do very well. He's very happy that you're going to be the ambassador, so good luck. You're going to be making your journey in 2 weeks. Good luck. I may never see him again. It's very sad. Also, I want to thank Secretaries Howard Lutnick, Doug Burgum, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, my daughter Tiffany and her wonderful husband Michael, and so many other distinguished guests. We have so many people here, senators. We have other secretaries, and I'm just seeing some of you in the crowd. You are a good-looking crowd. I also want to thank everyone here tonight who's so generously supported our effort to restore and revitalize the Kennedy Center. It was in rough shape to a lesser extent, but the White House was in rough shape. You know, we're bringing the White House back room by room, and they sort of laugh when they say, well, the Lincoln bedroom, we had to fix it up. It wasn't looking too good, but we fixed it up, leaving it the way it was, but fixed up. It's in tippy-top shape. You know, I always used to say, it's got to be tippy-top. But we had a lot of other presidents that weren't into that. I've always been into it. The Oval Office has reached a new level. The Cabinet Room, everyone wants to see the Cabinet Room, and it's so beautiful now. We took some of the paintings that were downstairs in vaults. They have big vaults. They have 2,000 paintings, over 2,000. We have great curators, 7 of them. and they love the place. Some of them have been there for 40 years, and if they don't like you, you don't get the painting you want. You don't get the Declaration of Independence brought up into the Oval Office. A couple of other presidents suffered without it because they said, "I'm not going to be able to do it." But they've been great. But we have tremendous artwork being brought up and has.
We're back with the 55th Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. And Congressman, I want to get your take on accountability and affordability. I mean, first of all, we can never get any accountability out of this Congress. We're still waiting on someone to take the fall for Russia collusion. And then you've got this trip that President Trump is taking. Is that the right move? How is it possible that the Democrats now own this issue of affordability?
Yeah. First, the accountability. The Congress has to follow through. Jack Smith has to be held accountable of what he went after. He was not confirmed. He was unelectable, and it just weaponized the system. Look, at the end of the day, as we gather more information, I bet he didn't just go after Republican leaders in the House. I bet he went after a lot of other Americans, people in the media. I wouldn't be shocked if he tried to go after your phone, Maria, because you would speak the truth from the very beginning about the Russia collusion. Now, when it comes to affordability, remember, the big, beautiful bill does not actually go into effect till January. Everything the president has been doing, the bringing the gas prices down and the others. Remember how bad he inherited this country, the amount of inflation and ever. That doesn't happen overnight, but he's done a tremendous job. Now the House and the Senate need to keep up because he's doing most of this on his own by executive order. But we need to see is here's the president going out to Pennsylvania leading in the messaging.
Okay.
The House and Senate should be doing this. And what they need to do is, where is their economic plan to go forward? Because remember, the reconciliation bill, you couldn't write everything you wanted. So I want to see a health plan.
AI can turn your lights on.
Lights on.
And drive your car. And even write your kid's essay.
Been brought up from the vault. So it was sitting for 100 years, 150 years downstairs under the White House, and now we have it on walls throughout the building. And those walls, before we put them up, we make sure those walls are in perfect shape. I say, you got to make sure these walls are up before you do anything. And we've done a lot of work. We've redone great marble floors that were beat to hell. We've done not good floors that were out of one-by-one boxes from certain stores that are not very good. They shouldn't be there. Those floors should not have been there. We've replaced them with the most beautiful marble, statuary marble. They call it in Italy statuario, great white and black marble that forms Greece and big parts of Italy. And Italy during a time when Italy was extremely strong, and Greece when Greece was Greece. And they had that, and we now have that in the White House, replacing one-by-one tiles that were not good. But we've fixed the White House and we've fixed the Kennedy Center. The Kennedy Center has some work to be done. We've worked very hard on it, actually. I spent a lot of time there with contractors. I mean, I go around, I have two jobs. I have a construction job, which is really like relaxation for me because I've been doing it all my life. But we're fixing the Kennedy. I said, you need a new roof. And he says, sir, there's a lot of water coming down. You know, they didn't know. You need a new roof. It's been there for like 45, 50 years. And we're doing everything. We're doing brand new air conditioning. Carrier's been so incredible. They made a donation, a big donation on the ballroom. We were bidding out the ballroom and Carrier came along and they said, sir, we'd like to contribute the air conditioning for the ballroom. It was like $17 million. It's a lot of air conditioning and heating. And a great steel company came along and said, sir, would like to contribute the steel. That's a big steel. That's a big account. And we had Caterpillar tractor come along and said, sir, we'd like to contribute all of the tractors, all of the excavation equipment, and all of the lifts and generators and everything else you have in the ballroom, because it's got a lot of very complex equipment that you wouldn't think of. So I want to thank Caterpillar and others. Others are going to be made public, but they've really been very gracious, and we're having the same thing happen at the Kennedy Center. They view it as a very important thing, and we have marble experts, some of the greatest marble people anywhere in the world, and they're taking this marble that was in such bad shape that everyone said, we have to rip it down, we have to take it down. No, the marble is great, big, beautiful slabs. You don't get them like that anymore. It's very hard. Giant, they call them the giant slabs. They don't make them. but with tender, loving care. And I always say, remember, if you take 1/100th of an inch off the top of the marble, you have brand new marble. People don't know that. They see the marble and they say, oh, the marble's stained or the marble's gone. I say, no, no. If you go just a little bit, if you take just a little bit of that skin off and you get it down, it's called grinding, you grind it down just 1/100th of an inch, you have a brand new slab of marble. And you've saved a little money, to put it mildly, like millions. The marble job was going to cost $59 million. They thought we had to take all the marble off the building and replace the marble with new marble. It was going to cost 59 to, we had prices from 59 to 75 million. I think I'm going to spend $1 million to have it made beautiful. And what you replace it with was not nearly as good as what we already have. So it's sort of, I don't know, I like to tell you those little construction, because we talk politics all the time, and I like politics too. I said to somebody the other day, am I a better politician or construction real estate person? And they didn't know how to answer that question. I'm not sure how to answer it either, if you want to know the truth. But I actually get great relaxation out of fixing the White House and fixing the Kennedy Center, and it takes a little time, but not really, because it's time that some people want to rest. I don't really want to rest. I want to do things, and to me, it relaxes me. It's almost like, it's really almost better than resting. And we're bringing these places of great distinction, we're bringing them back, and the Kennedy Center is going to be incredible. Within 10 months, I mean, you're going to see, we've already done tremendous amounts of work, but within 10 months, you're going to see something that you'll really be amazed at. You know, one of the things with the Kennedy Center, because this is really honoring that tonight, but the sound is great. And if you don't have good sound, Lincoln, I don't want to say anything bad about Lincoln Center, but they've had a lot of problems over the years with sound. A lot of you, some of you on that board, you're here tonight, there's a very distinguished board also. But as you know, they have at Lincoln Center, they have a sound problem, and they've rebuilt one of their great buildings because the sound was always bad, and they can't get it right. They can't get it right. It's a very hard thing to do. There's a little luck to that. You know, you have to be a little bit lucky. And some of the greatest opera houses in the world in Europe were built 200 years ago, 300 years ago. And they had no sound engineers in those days, but they did have a lot of marble and stone. And marble and stone make really for great sound. I see we have Gloria, we have Kiss, we have George Strait, we have, think of it, we have the great Michael Crawford, and they know what I'm talking about probably better than anybody else in the whole world. But it's, sound is a big deal. And if you don't have it in a building, you pretty much never have it. They rebuild it, they spend millions and millions of dollars, they take it apart. They put up new walls, they put up new seats, they put up new everything, and they open it up, and it's a disaster. And the one thing with Kennedy Center, they have great sound. They've always been known to have great sound. And we're putting up large slabs of marble in a couple of the great halls, and it's already, we did some testing, it's made it, as good as it is, it's made it even better. Marble can do that. So we've reviewed everything you have to review and reversed the decline of this cherished institution. And the Kennedy Center was really, boy, the money they spent over the years. They spent so much money, and you couldn't see where the money was spent. We're still trying to find out where did they spend all that money, but they didn't know what they were doing, and it's a shame. And we almost lost that building. That building was very close, structurally and every other way. We've totally reversed it, and now it's going to be in great shape for another, literally for 100 years. It's going to be in great shape. It's going to be in better shape than ever before. So we've done a real job. We've secured historic funding for the Kennedy Center, and we got that in the great big beautiful bill. That's a bill that everybody said was impossible to get passed. They said, you can't do it, it's too big. It was supposed to be 17 bills. I said, let's put it in one, because the Democrats are absolutely crazy. And I have some Democrat friends here, but they're crazy. And they might have approved a couple of them, but most of them they wouldn't. I said, if we put it all in one, there's something for everybody. And we got it approved with a pretty small majority. We have the majority, but pretty small majority. We got it approved. And we got some support. We got a little support from some of the rational Democrats. But one of the things we were able to do is help very much the Kennedy Center. We got so many other things, though. Largest tax cuts in history. No tax on, think of this, tips. No, for the workers, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security for our great seniors, no tax on overtime. Nobody thought that was possible. You're allowed if you buy a car. These people don't know about buying cars, because you buy cars, probably you're not going out to borrow a lot of money, the group in this room. But you know what? Middle-income people, they never had this before. If you go out and borrow money, which almost everyone does to buy a car, you're now allowed to deduct the interest for income tax purposes. Never happened before. It's a great thing. We have so many things in the great, big, beautiful bill. But one of the things we have is we're going to rebuild our city, Washington, D.C. We now have one of the safest cities in the country. It was a horror show when I came here. A year and a half ago, this city was so dangerous. A year ago, it was so dangerous. We've been there 10 months, and now we're setting records for safety. We've had virtually no crime. We had terrorism 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, horrible terrorism. But it sounds like we were doing so well that the terrorists felt they didn't want to see us do very well. But we have right now the safest capital. We have as safe a capital as anywhere in the world, and we had one of the most unsafe capitals in the world. Thank you. And I walk through the White House, and I'll see especially young women say, "Sir, thank you very much." And I know immediately what they're saying. They're not thanking me for the 8 wars that we've stopped. They're not thanking me for even the tax cuts or any of the other things we've done. They're thanking me because they can actually walk to the White House. They feel safe now in the city, and they are. And I want to thank our National Guard. They've been unbelievable. The National Guard has been great. And Christy and Tom Homan and all the people that work so hard on that. And as you probably noticed, we just went into New Orleans, and we went into Memphis, Tennessee. And we went in a light way because we have a lot of opposition there with these people. They want to have crime. I mean, it's the craziest thing, Chicago. But we've brought down crime and just given it a little dose of what we do really well. But we'll, at some point, just go in and do it exactly the way we want. We won't have any crime, and we'll have very little crime in Chicago, almost none. We'll stop it everywhere. We do stop it everywhere. And we had a governor, a very good governor from Louisiana. Jeff Landry just called, and he said, "Please do me a favor. Would you send the troops into New Orleans? It's really gotten bad." And I said, "We'll do it." We just sent them in, and within about 3 days, everyone said it's like a different place. And he's a smart governor, and some of the governors, you'd be surprised at some of the ones that are calling, but we're stopping crime. I said we were going to, during the campaign, we're going to stop crime. Nobody knew we were going to stop it to this extent. Nobody knew we were going to have a border where in 6 months, not one person came into our country illegally. Think of that. So we went from the worst border where millions and millions, 25 million people over the course of the 4 years came into our country, many from prisons and gang members, drug dealers, mental institutions. They came into our country, getting them out, have to get them out. Murderers, we have 11,888 murderers. Many of them are now either out or in jail because they'll murder again. More than 50% of those people murdered more than one person. But we took a very strong stand, and people are really liking it. And by the way, drugs coming into our country by sea, down 94%. Okay, down 94%. And I'm trying to figure out who the other 6% is, because frankly, I think they are they got to be the bravest people. Who are the 6% that are still trying to come in? But down 94%. And we're going to start that same process on land, because we know every route, we know every house, we know where they live, we know everything about them. They killed 300,000 people last year. And that's like a war. That's like a terrible war. Not going to let it happen. So we're doing a job that nobody else could do. But we're building this institution back to what it should be, and the nation's premier venue for the arts. And we're going to see that because D.C. is now a safe place. People want to be here. The restaurants are opening. You know, if you go back a year, nobody wanted to go to restaurants. They lost 40% of their restaurants. They closed. They had no business. And the restaurants that were open were doing no business. And people felt safe, unsafe, even sitting, waiting for a meal. People would come in and do bad things. We don't have that anymore. And now restaurants are open. You can't even get into a restaurant now in Washington, D.C. It's a beautiful thing to watch. And we're showcasing our country. And we're always going to have it because the capital of the United States of America has to be a safe and beautiful place. And we're fixing it. We're fixing the roads. We're removing the graffiti, one of the most beautiful marble you've ever seen. We're removing granite. I like granite better on the outside because it's real easy, but the marble is very porous. During the Biden administration, they sprayed a lot of red paint on a lot of white marble, and you still see it, you know. They worked real hard to get it off, but it goes down deep. It's a disgrace what they were allowed to do. It was also a disgrace that they allowed millions of people into our country illegally, and people that were not people that we want to have. They weren't people that could love our country. We want people coming into our country that can love our country. So the generosity, of so many outstanding donors, and Rick mentioned some of them, but we've had so many people that just are so generous. It's been really incredible. And as you know, this is America's 250th anniversary. So we have all of these people, and next year is right around the corner. And that's going to be big. Then we have the World Cup coming, and we have the Olympics coming. And, you know, I got the Olympics, and I got the World Cup. I cannot take credit for getting 250 years. That was just, we sort of lucked out. I tried to do that, but it didn't work. We lucked out. But the 250 is going to be incredible. In fact, we're having, on June 14th, we're having a fight. All of the greatest champions in the world, the UFC fight, they're building an arena in front of the White House, if you can believe it. Then like 6,000 seats, and then they're going to build it for the fight. They're going to have the greatest champions of the world coming, and they're going to have over 100,000 people out. They're putting screens all over certain parts of Washington so everyone can see it. I don't think there'll be anything like it. It'll be on a Sunday night, June 14th. Flag Day happens to be my birthday, but I didn't do it for that reason. Just it actually, sir, we like the June 14th date. I said, you know, it's my birthday. They didn't know it, but they picked it. But it's, I'll take a little heat on that, but it's not that. But I will tell you, that's going to be some. Everyone's asking me for tickets for the UFC. But it's going to be great. They're going to have the greatest champions in the world all fighting that night. The great Dana White does a great job, and he wanted to do it. And the White House will be the background of the fight. There'll never be anything like this. There has never been, and there never will be anything like that. But a few hours ago, I had the tremendous privilege of presenting the 2025 Kennedy Center honorees with their medallions, their beautiful medallions from Tiffany, right in the Oval Office. And we thought we'd do it here. We thought we'd do it at different places and maybe pick the one that we like the best. And we said, no, that hits so well. And the Oval Office, right, Michael? The Oval Office, he said it. I've never seen anything like this. There's something about the Oval Office that's special. It's really just special. Even in its poorer state, it was still the Oval Office, and we appreciate it, and we have great respect. So many things happened in the Oval Office, and they got to see the beautiful cabinet room, which we've brought back to life like it should be. Beautiful. It's a beautiful room, and it's really a beautiful room once again. Actually, more beautiful than it ever was. It was never like this. But the American people are proud of our country. We're proud of our beautiful White House, and we're proud of our beautiful Kennedy Center. And now you have it at the top of the line. The lives they've led, these wonderful people that are here tonight, the legacies that they forged have become integral part of Americans' priceless cultural heritage. All of the people that we honor tonight are such beautiful words. I mean, you're priceless. It's a cultural heritage that you've created, each of you in a very different way, most of you in a very different form, catering to different people, frankly. But you add it up and it's 100% of our population. Each of them has given us treasures that will be passed down to every future generation. And I don't think you even appreciate what you've done. I don't think you really appreciate your greatness. Decades and even centuries from now, people will still watch and admire the films of Sylvester Stallone. There's nobody else can do those films. Nobody can do it. You know, he started Rocky, he had no money at all. And he had nothing. He had a car that barely couldn't, he left New York, I think a place called Brooklyn, right, Sly? Brooklyn? Good place. A lot of good people come out of Brooklyn. But he got that car to just get him there, and he stayed in his car, and he slept, and he wrote this script called Rocky, along with about 28,000 other people. Everybody writes a boxing script, right? But for some reason, they loved it. And Sly didn't have 10 cents, had nothing. And they offered him, like, a lot of money. They offered him, I think, $500,000, some number that he never even thought was even possible. And he said, no, I don't want it. I want to make sure that you're casting the right person to play the role. And they said, well, we have stars. And they brought in stars. But the stars didn't have good bodies. They were flabby. They were not really boxers. And Sly would look at some of these guys, big names. He was intimidated in one way, but in the other way, he said, that guy can't play the role. And we won't say the names of the people, but they're really top actors. And for some reason, here's a guy that had no contacts, no anything, but they loved this. One studio in particular loved this script. And they were going crazy over it. And they brought in the top people, and Sly said, let me see your box. And he'd have a guy, and he said, he can't play the role. He had a lot of flab around the upper chest area. It's supposed to be solid like a rock. And then they brought in another one. And finally they looked at Sly. They said, oh, man, you're in good shape. You think you could play the role? He said, I'll play the role. I'm not going to let somebody else play it. And he was actually willing. He thought they'd have somebody, but he said, that's not a boxer. That's not a fighter. These are good movie stars. Keep their shirt on, but they're good movie stars. But they're not fighters, right? And he took that role, and the rest is history. The rest is history. But think of it, how many people would turn down, a tremendous, enough money, he probably thought he could live for the rest of his life. He probably could have if he had to. But who would turn down that kind of money? And he did it. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. He wanted it to be right. And who would then think of it as, isn't it just about the largest grossing movie? It's like, there's never been anything like it. Rocky, the whole Rocky series, it's been incredible. And then you had a little thing called Rambo. I loved Rambo, Sly, I'll tell you. I loved Rambo. I got to watch Rambo one time. I said, I wonder what this is all about. I went to a movie theater a long time ago when I used to go to movie theaters. I'd like to go again. I loved them. I loved the popcorn. And it was Rambo. I knew nothing about it, but I liked Sly. So I said, let's go see it. After about 4 minutes, they said, this movie is great. Rambo, I think Rambo gave Rocky a little run, too, if you want to know the truth. Loved it. We loved all of them. But really, a legend, and each of the people that are being honored, they're treasures that really will be passed down to future generations, decades and centuries from now. People are going to be looking at your work. They're going to be seeing every one of you. Your work is so incredible. And they'll be thrilling to the performances of Sly and the performances, it's all on tape, of the great Michael Crawford and Phantom. It's all on tape, thank goodness for tape. Because if you couldn't see him, if you would miss that, if you wouldn't see Michael Crawford, the way he moved, the voice was magnificent, but the way he moved and the hands, the whole thing, it's just, there'll never be anything like it. But we have it on tape from every different angle, so guess what? You're lucky. There are a lot of great people that they've never been preserved that way, but you've been preserved, and people are going to be looking, people are going to be watching that and comparing in other plays and in other forms and other venues. They're going to be looking and comparing others to you, and I don't think they're ever going to find anybody like you, Michael, okay? I know something about that business. I don't think they'll find anybody like you. The look, the movement, the whole deal, and then the voice, right? The voice, that beautiful voice. And they'll still know the unforgettable songs of George and Gloria and Paul, Gene, Peter, and the late, great Ace Frehley, who's represented by his daughter, and she was crying like so, she was crying. And all that meant to me is one thing, she loved her father, right? She loved her father. And the guys loved him. That band has stuck together for a long time. I've known a lot of bands, and They don't last too long. They're gone, much to the detriment of themselves, actually. But these guys get along, and I was watching. I love to watch people, and I was watching them, and they really respect each other, and they like each other. I just congratulate you. What a job. What a job you've done. What a great job. Thank you all. I've known Gene for a long time, and I've known the others for shorter periods of time, but they're real talent. And tonight they're really appreciated. The world has seen it, and the world is now watching. They're watching. The whole world is watching this. So thank you very much. On the film sets, Broadway stages, and in sold-out arenas around the globe, these exceptional individuals have spent their lives making the most of their incredible God-given talents. They have talent. They have talent. The great Gary Player, he hits shots. He's 90 years old. He still plays good. He shot a 70 with me the other day. He's 90. We're playing pretty far back, too. He's incredible. You think Biden could do that? I don't think so. Can't lift the club. But Gary was demonstrating shots, and one guy was having a very hard time, couldn't get out of a sand trap. Gary's known as the greatest sand player, #1 ever. He got down in the U.S. Opens, 2 U.S. Opens back-to-back. He got down 69 out of 71 times. I would say that's good. Even if you don't know anything about golf, you'd have to say that's good. But he got down, and this poor man that I was with, he was blessed with talent, but not golf talent. And he cannot get out of a trap. It was sad to watch. And Gary says, "You don't understand." And he dropped 5 balls. Ping, 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 ping. Every ball right next to the hole. And this guy, and he tried it. He hit the ball a foot. He hit the next one over the green like by 50 yards. The whole thing was a disaster. He said, "Well, here's the problem. I've got talent and you don't." And that's what's true about you. You have talent. These 5 groups and people, they have great talent. And if you don't have talent, to be honest with you, there's not a damn thing you can do. You can get a little better. But if you don't have talent, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. All you can do is try and find something else where you do have talent. But I just want to thank that, you shared these gifts, because you're really sharing a great gift with the world. And maybe tonight more so than any time in your career you've shared tonight, because tonight the whole world is focused on you. I want to celebrate all of this together, and tomorrow we pay tribute to them magnificently, and they're going to see something really special, and it's so great to have this at the Kennedy Center. I want to thank, as you know, FIFA for the award they gave me, but more importantly for choosing the Kennedy Center. We had over 1 billion people watching they were choosing the teams, which team is playing the next team, and you can imagine the thrill. But Johnny, who's the commissioner, he's a fantastic guy. I guess you have to say he's like the biggest guy in sports, Bob. He's big. He's saying we have 58 Super Bowls. I don't know if that's true, but let's say we have a few of them. But they have a lot of matches, and it's all taking place here. Don't forget, when I made that deal during my first term, and then I made the deal for the Olympics, and I said, man, it's so bad, because they were made 6 years away. So I said, I won't be president. And then I got screwed, and I said, let's do it again, and I did it again. We did great the second time, unbelievable. We won by a lot, but the third time, we won by 10 million votes. But it was a COVID year. A lot of things happened, and a very crooked election, a lot of crooked people. But I said, we got to do it again. That's why we never give up. These people have never given up. They don't give up. Bob Kraft never gave up. Did you ever give up, Bob? I don't think so. Bob Kraft, have you ever given up, Bob? Look at him. He had a lousy team last year. He didn't know what to do. And now he's leading the NFL again. I'm sure your other owners are extremely happy for you, though, Bob, right? They're thrilled. They're just thrilled. But no, people don't give up. The real winners need the talent, but don't ever give up. But as chairman of the Kennedy Center, as president of the United States, and as a true fan of each of these incredible celebrities, but great performers, much more than a celebrity. You're much more than a celebrity. It gives me tremendous pleasure to congratulate them once again and say thank you for your incredible career. Thank you for gracing us with this wisdom and this genius that you have. That's what it is, every one of them. And the First Lady, who you saw yesterday and you're going to see again tomorrow. We're going to be having a good time. She congratulates everybody. She's focused on Christmas decorations at the White House, where she's done a great job. And actually, the press has treated us very good. The first year, the trees were white and beautiful, and the media said, "Why white?" So I said, listen, do something that's more noticeable. So the next year we did green. And they said, why aren't you doing white? We like the white better. The next year we did red. We got killed with the red. But so we went through 4 years of that stuff. Nobody does it better. And this year it's just so good that they actually said the White House looks phenomenal when you add up all of the other things that we've done to it. You know, I tell people for the first 4 years, I was the hunted. So I didn't have a lot of time to fix up the floors, to redo the Lincoln bathroom. I took a little heat. It was the worst job. It was done in many years ago. It was done during actually the Truman administration with very cheap green tile. That was in Lincoln. Now we have it done in beautiful, beautiful paradisial marble. It's all book matched and so beautiful. And people said, oh, why is he wasting time? That's not wasting time. That's saving our heritage. You know, many, many things like that. It's saving the heritage of this country. And it's so important. But I'm just going to leave you with the fact that this is a very brilliant and very important group of people that are in this room tonight. A lot of people wanted to be here, and the ballroom is very small, Marco. I mean, this is like, you know what this is? About 1/10. This is section A of what's being built. This is like a little corner, but it is beautiful. And I have to say this: Marco Rubio is a great Secretary of State. And I think he's going to go down as, you know, look, we've had some good ones. We've had some bad ones, too, real bad ones. We've had some real dummies and some real brilliant, great ones. I think Marco, if we keep going like this, he's going to go down as the greatest Secretary of State in the history of our country. So, Marco, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I just want to thank everybody. It's a very special journey that we're on. It's a beautiful journey. And we're beautifying our country. We're strengthening our country. We're respected again as a country. We're so respected now, like never before. And whether it's Europe, Japan, I mean, every one of them, they have tremendous respect. They used to laugh at us not long ago. A year and a half ago, they were laughing at us, and they're not laughing anymore. They respect us like they've never done before. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. It's a great honor to have you. Thank you very much. Okay.
All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, reasoned argument, and dank memes. We do battle in the sphere of ideas and ideas only. We neither need nor condone the use of force in our work here. Speaking at the Reagan National Defense Forum, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth promised that the days of cartel narco-terrorists operating freely in the Western Hemisphere are over. He says the U.S. is treating the big cartels like foreign terror organizations, authorizing strikes on drug-laden vessels and targeting their finances. The message is clear. The administration wants Americans to know it is willing to use hard power against the drug trade. Hegseth also pledged to restore unquestioned U.S. military dominance in the Western Hemisphere, saying peace comes only through strength. He pointed to expanded joint exercises, naval patrols, and intelligence sharing with regional partners. Critics worry the posture risks escalation, but supporters argue that after years of drift, Washington is finally reasserting control in its own backyard. In North Carolina, a previously deported illegal immigrant is charged in a knife attack on a passenger aboard a train. Local authorities say the suspect had a prior removal order, but re-entered the country and slipped through the system. The case is now fueling fresh calls from border security advocates for tougher interior enforcement and an end to so-called sanctuary practices. Point. In Texas, a new law has taken effect allowing ivermectin to be sold over the counter without a prescription. Pharmacists will keep the drug behind the counter, but adults can now request it directly. Backers say it's about medical freedom. Many doctors and federal regulators warn improper use can be dangerous and stress that the drug is not approved for COVID-19 treatment. A magnitude 7.0 earthquake has struck in remote wilderness near the Alaska-Canada border, north of Yakutat. The USGS reports shaking felt across parts of Alaska, but early indications show no tsunami threat and limited structural damage due to the area's low population. Emergency officials are still checking infrastructure and advising residents to be ready for aftershocks. A new investigative claim is raising eyebrows in Washington that a hidden, coordinated command structure inside the federal government quietly directs inspectors general. The allegation is that this shadow layer can steer or stall oversight in politically sensitive cases. So far, the story is driven by whistleblower statements and commentary, but if Congress takes it up, it could trigger significant oversight hearings. A 2007 clip of then-Speaker Nancy Pelosi is circulating again, showing her insisting illegal immigrants should not receive government health care benefits. Conservatives are replaying the video as proof that Democratic leaders once agreed with stricter limits on public benefits. Today's party line is far more permissive, and the contrast is being used to highlight how far the immigration debate has shifted. Point. U.S. Treasuries are quietly having one of their strongest years since 2020. Benchmarks show total returns around 6% or more, outpacing many other developed world bond markets as investors pile back into government debt after years of rate shocks. For Washington, the rally helps finance huge deficits. For savers, it signals that safe assets are finally paying again. Space weather watchers are on alert after detecting Type 2 and Type 4 radio signatures that suggest a large, fast coronal mass ejection headed toward Earth. If the CME hits squarely, it could trigger strong geomagnetic storms, disrupt HF radio and GPS, and produce vivid auroras at lower latitudes. Power grid operators and satellite firms are monitoring forecasts closely over the next 24 to 48 hours. A powerful Thanksgiving video from Angel Families features parents and relatives who lost loved ones to crimes tied to illegal immigration or fentanyl. In it, they thank President Trump personally for tougher border policies and for publicly honoring their children's names. The emotional messages are being shared widely in conservative circles as a rebuke to prior administrations' handling of the border crisis. Television doctor and former Senate candidate Mehmet Oz is warning that massive fraud in Minnesota's social services system could hammer Medicaid budgets. Referring to the Somali-linked Feeding Our Future scandal and related schemes, he argues that if similar abuse is happening in healthcare programs, the hit to taxpayers could be enormous. State officials say they're tightening audits, but whistleblowers claim problems go back years. The Department of Homeland Security is pushing back on a Democratic lawmaker's claim that she was pepper sprayed by ICE officers during a protest. DHS says body camera and surveillance footage show officers using crowd control tactics nearby, but not directly targeting her. The incident is now a political flashpoint, with the left accusing ICE of brutality and the right accusing critics of staging drama for the cameras. Dramatic new video shows a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter sniper disabling the engines of a narco go-fast boat in the eastern Pacific. The interdiction led to the seizure of more than 20,000 pounds of cocaine in a single operation, part of a broader campaign against cartel trafficking lanes. Officials say the bust represents millions of potential doses kept off U.S. streets. Point. In Indiana, President Trump is publicly blasting fellow Republicans who refuse to back his preferred congressional map. He says lawmakers who vote against the plan are helping Democrats and should be primaried out of office. Trump is again calling out former CIA Director John Brennan, asking whether he'll finally get his just desserts over his role in Russiagate and other controversies. So far, Brennan has not been charged with any crimes and defends his tenure as lawful. But among Trump's base, he remains a symbol of what they view as a politicized intelligence community that interfered in domestic politics. Point. The State Department has issued new guidance telling consular officers to deny visas to applicants whose work involves fact-checking, content moderation, trust and safety, or similar roles seen as censoring Americans. The policy is part of a broader push against what the administration calls digital speech control. Critics warn it politicizes visa decisions and could backfire on U.S. tech and media workers abroad. Russian forces have carried out large-scale missile and drone strikes on Ukraine's military and energy infrastructure overnight. Early reports describe hits on power plants, substations, and rail hubs, once again plunging cities into rolling blackouts as winter sets in. Kyiv says its air defenses intercepted many of the incoming weapons, but warns that stockpiles of interceptors are under strain. Point. The Justice Department is asking a federal appeals court to dismiss a whistleblower lawsuit alleging serious problems in a Pfizer COVID vaccine trial. Attorneys for whistleblower Brooke Jackson say leaked FDA communications show regulators knew about safety and data issues, including deaths, but pressed forward anyway. Department of Justice argues the case lacks the legal basis to proceed, a move critics call an attempt to shield Big Pharma from scrutiny. A new report says the European Union quietly pumped over $542 million into 4 large NGOs tied to U.S. development work: Save the Children, DAI, Catholic Relief Services, and Mercy Corps. Projects reportedly range from migrant programs to election-related initiatives. Critics call it political interference using European taxpayers' money. Point. Canada's medical assistance in dying program is under renewed fire, as estimates suggest total deaths since legalization may now be approaching 100,000. Official federal reports confirm tens of thousands of MAID cases and double-digit annual growth. Supporters say it offers relief from unbearable suffering. Opponents warn that a right to die is sliding into quiet pressure on the elderly, disabled, and poor. An essay circulating under the title Color Revolution Part 2 claims the CIA is facing internal purges and a crisis of legitimacy after years of alleged involvement in domestic political manipulation. The author argues that the only path to national recovery is to dismantle entrenched security state networks and rebuild accountable intelligence structures. Mainstream outlets dismiss the piece as conspiratorial, but it is gaining traction in dissident circles. Qatar's prime minister says the Gaza truce cannot be considered a real ceasefire until Israeli forces fully withdraw and normal life returns to the Strip. Speaking at a major diplomatic forum, he called the situation a critical moment and urged all sides to move to the next phase of the U.S. brokered peace plan. Mediators warn that without progress on withdrawal and reconstruction, the pause in fighting could collapse. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has announced a new vetting center aimed at tightening screening for terrorists, criminal aliens, and immigration fraud. Based in Atlanta, the unit will centralize background checks and data analysis for certain applications. Supporters say it's long overdue. Critics worry it could expand secret watch lists and make it harder for legitimate applicants to clear the system. Point. At the Department of Health and Human Services, officials have quietly changed the nameplate on former Assistant Secretary Rachel Levine's official portrait back to Richard Levine, Levine's birth name. The move has set off a firestorm, with critics calling it a deliberate insult to a transgender official and supporters arguing it reflects biological reality. HHS has not fully explained who ordered the change or why now. The Trump administration is dramatically tightening access to work permits for asylum seekers and other migrants with humanitarian status. New rules cut permit validity from 5 years down to about 18 months and add stricter eligibility checks. The White House says it's closing loopholes that encouraged abuse. Point. U.S. Border Patrol is rolling out a new $5,000 apprehension fee for illegal immigrants age 14 and up who are caught entering or living in the country without inspection. The fee, created in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, applies regardless of how long someone has been in the U.S. or where they were stopped. Supporters say it's a needed deterrent. On the economic front, Trump is touting what he calls an affordability crusade, arguing that Americans want simple, low-cost, tiny trucks, not expensive, software-laden electric vehicles that feel like computers on wheels. He's pressuring automakers to build smaller, cheaper models in the U.S. and warning that heavy regulation and EV mandates are pricing working families out of the new car market. A new watchdog report on Afghanistan reconstruction says billions of dollars in U.S.-funded weapons and gear left behind after the 2021 withdrawal now form the core of the Taliban's military. The tally includes hundreds of thousands of firearms, vehicles, and other equipment that fell into Taliban hands as the old government collapsed. For many Americans, it confirms their worst fears about how the war ended and the risks it created. Speaking at the Reagan National Defense Forum, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth promised that the days of cartel narco-terrorists operating freely in the Western Hemisphere are over. He says the U.S. is treating the big cartels like foreign terror organizations, authorizing strikes on drug-laden vessels and targeting their finances. The message is clear. The administration wants Americans to know it is willing to use hard power against the drug trade. Hegseth also pledged to restore unquestioned U.S. military dominance in the Western Hemisphere, saying peace comes only through strength. He pointed to expanded joint exercises, naval patrols, and intelligence sharing with regional partners. Critics worry the posture risks escalation, but supporters argue that after years of drift, Washington is finally reasserting control in its own backyard. In North Carolina, a previously deported illegal immigrant is charged in a knife attack on a passenger aboard a train. Local authorities say the suspect had a prior removal order, but re-entered the country and slipped through the system. The case is now fueling fresh calls from border security advocates for tougher interior enforcement and an end to so-called sanctuary practices. Point. In Texas, a new law has taken effect allowing ivermectin to be sold over the counter without a prescription. Pharmacists will keep the drug behind the counter, but adults can now request it directly. Backers say it's about medical freedom. Many doctors and federal regulators warn improper use can be dangerous and stress that the drug is not approved for COVID-19 treatment. A magnitude 7.0 earthquake has struck in remote wilderness near the Alaska-Canada border, north of Yakutat. The USGS reports shaking felt across parts of Alaska, but early indications show no tsunami threat and limited structural damage due to the area's low population. Emergency officials are still checking infrastructure and advising residents to be ready for aftershocks. A new investigative claim is raising eyebrows in Washington that a hidden, coordinated command structure inside the federal government quietly directs inspectors general. The allegation is that this shadow layer can steer or stall oversight in politically sensitive cases. So far, the story is driven by whistleblower statements and commentary, but if Congress takes it up, it could trigger significant oversight hearings. A 2007 clip of then-Speaker Nancy Pelosi is circulating again, showing her insisting illegal immigrants should not receive government health care benefits. Conservatives are replaying the video as proof that Democratic leaders once agreed with stricter limits on public benefits. Today's party line is far more permissive, and the contrast is being used to highlight how far the immigration debate has shifted. Point. U.S. Treasuries are quietly having one of their strongest years since 2020. Benchmarks show total returns around 6% or more, outpacing many other developed world bond markets as investors pile back into government debt after years of rate shocks. For Washington, the rally helps finance huge deficits. For savers, it signals that safe assets are finally paying again. Space weather watchers are on alert after detecting Type 2 and Type 4 radio signatures that suggest a large, fast coronal mass ejection headed toward Earth. If the CME hits squarely, it could trigger strong geomagnetic storms, disrupt HF radio and GPS, and produce vivid auroras at lower latitudes. Power grid operators and satellite firms are monitoring forecasts closely over the next 24 to 48 hours. A powerful Thanksgiving video from Angel Families features parents and relatives who lost loved ones to crimes tied to illegal immigration or fentanyl. In it, they thank President Trump personally for tougher border policies and for publicly honoring their children's names. The emotional messages are being shared widely in conservative circles as a rebuke to prior administration's handling of the border crisis. Television doctor and former Senate candidate Mehmet Oz is warning that massive fraud in Minnesota's social services system could hammer Medicaid budgets. Referring to the Somali-linked Feeding Our Future scandal and related schemes, he argues that if similar abuse is happening in healthcare programs, the hit to taxpayers could be enormous. State officials say they're tightening audits, but whistleblowers claim problems go back years. The Department of Homeland Security is pushing back on a Democratic lawmaker's claim that she was pepper sprayed by ICE officers during a protest. DHS says body camera and surveillance footage show officers using crowd control tactics nearby, but not directly targeting her. The incident is now a political flashpoint, with the left accusing ICE of brutality and the right accusing critics of staging drama for the cameras. Dramatic new video shows a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter sniper disabling the engines of a narco go-fast boat in the eastern Pacific. The interdiction led to the seizure of more than 20,000 pounds of cocaine in a single operation, part of a broader campaign against cartel trafficking lanes. Officials say the bust represents millions of potential doses kept off U.S. streets. Point. In Indiana, President Trump is publicly blasting fellow Republicans who refuse to back his preferred congressional map. He says lawmakers who vote against the plan are helping Democrats and should be primaried out of office. Trump is again calling out former CIA Director John Brennan, asking whether he'll finally get his just desserts over his role in Russiagate and other controversies. So far, Brennan has not been charged with any crimes and defends his tenure as lawful. But among Trump's base, he remains a symbol of what they view as a politicized intelligence community that interfered in domestic politics. Point. The State Department has issued new guidance telling consular officers to deny visas to applicants whose work involves fact-checking, content moderation, trust and safety, or similar roles seen as censoring Americans. The policy is part of a broader push against what the administration calls digital speech control. Critics warn it politicizes visa decisions and could backfire on U.S. tech and media workers abroad. Russian forces have carried out large-scale missile and drone strikes on Ukraine's military and energy infrastructure overnight. Early reports describe hits on power plants, substations, and rail hubs, once again plunging cities into rolling blackouts as winter sets in. Kyiv says its air defenses intercepted many of the incoming weapons, but warns that stockpiles of interceptors are under strain. Point. The Justice Department is asking a federal appeals court to dismiss a whistleblower lawsuit alleging serious problems in a Pfizer COVID vaccine trial. Attorneys for whistleblower Brooke Jackson say leaked FDA communications show regulators knew about safety and data issues, including deaths, but pressed forward anyway. Department of Justice argues the case lacks the legal basis to proceed, a move critics call an attempt to shield Big Pharma from scrutiny. A new report says the European Union quietly pumped over $542 million into 4 large NGOs tied to U.S. development work: Save the Children, DAI, Catholic Relief Services, and Mercy Corps. Projects reportedly range from migrant programs to election-related initiatives. Critics call it political interference using European taxpayers' money. Point. Canada's medical assistance in dying program is under renewed fire, as estimates suggest total deaths since legalization may now be approaching 100,000. Official federal reports confirm tens of thousands of MAID cases and double-digit annual growth. Supporters say it offers relief from unbearable suffering. Opponents warn that a right to die is sliding into quiet pressure on the elderly, disabled, and poor. An essay circulating under the title Color Revolution Part 2 claims the CIA is facing internal purges and a crisis of legitimacy after years of alleged involvement in domestic political manipulation. The author argues that the only path to national recovery is to dismantle entrenched security state networks and rebuild accountable intelligence structures. Mainstream outlets dismiss the piece as conspiratorial, but it is gaining traction in dissident circles. Qatar's prime minister says the Gaza truce cannot be considered a real ceasefire until Israeli forces fully withdraw and normal life returns to the Strip. Speaking at a major diplomatic forum, he called the situation a critical moment and urged all sides to move to the next phase of the U.S. brokered peace plan. Mediators warn that without progress on withdrawal and reconstruction, the pause in fighting could collapse. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has announced a new vetting center aimed at tightening screening for terrorists, criminal aliens, and immigration fraud. Based in Atlanta, the unit will centralize background checks and data analysis for certain applications. Supporters say it's long overdue. Critics worry it could expand secret watch lists and make it harder for legitimate applicants to clear the system. Point. At the Department of Health and Human Services, officials have quietly changed the nameplate on former Assistant Secretary Rachel Levine's official portrait back to Richard Levine, Levine's birth name. The move has set off a firestorm, with critics calling it a deliberate insult to a transgender official and supporters arguing it reflects biological reality. HHS has not fully explained who ordered the change or why now. The Trump administration is dramatically tightening access to work permits for asylum seekers and other migrants with humanitarian status. New rules cut permit validity from 5 years down to about 18 months and add stricter eligibility checks. The White House says it's closing loopholes that encouraged abuse. Point. U.S. Border Patrol is rolling out a new $5,000 apprehension fee for illegal immigrants age 14 and up who are caught entering or living in the country without inspection. The fee, created in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, applies regardless of how long someone has been in the U.S. or where they were stopped. Supporters say it's a needed deterrent. On the economic front, Trump is touting what he calls an affordability crusade, arguing that Americans want simple, low-cost, tiny trucks, not expensive, software-laden electric vehicles that feel like computers on wheels. He's pressuring automakers to build smaller, cheaper models in the U.S. and warning that heavy regulation and EV mandates are pricing working families out of the new car market. A new watchdog report on Afghanistan reconstruction says billions of dollars in U.S.-funded weapons and gear left behind after the 2021 withdrawal now form the core of the Taliban's military. The tally includes hundreds of thousands of firearms, vehicles, and other equipment that fell into Taliban hands as the old government collapsed. For many Americans, it confirms their worst fears about how the war ended and the risks it created. Speaking at the Reagan National Defense Forum, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth promised that the days of cartel narco-terrorists operating freely in the Western Hemisphere are over. He says the U.S. is treating the big cartels like foreign terror organizations, authorizing strikes on drug-laden vessels and targeting their finances. The message is clear. The administration wants Americans to know it is willing to use hard power against the drug trade. Hegseth also pledged to restore unquestioned U.S. military dominance in the Western Hemisphere, saying peace comes only through strength. He pointed to expanded joint exercises, naval patrols, and intelligence sharing with regional partners. Critics worry the posture risks escalation, but supporters argue that after years of drift, Washington is finally reasserting control in its own backyard. In North Carolina, a previously deported illegal immigrant is charged in a knife attack on a passenger aboard a train. Local authorities say the suspect had a prior removal order, but re-entered the country and slipped through the system. The case is now fueling fresh calls from border security advocates for tougher interior enforcement and an end to so-called sanctuary practices. Point. In Texas, a new law has taken effect allowing ivermectin to be sold over the counter without a prescription. Pharmacists will keep the drug behind the counter, but adults can now request it directly. Backers say it's about medical freedom. Many doctors and federal regulators warn improper use can be dangerous and stress that the drug is not approved for COVID-19 treatment. A magnitude 7.0 earthquake has struck in remote wilderness near the Alaska-Canada border, north of Yakutat. The USGS reports shaking felt across parts of Alaska, but early indications show no tsunami threat and limited structural damage due to the area's low population. Emergency officials are still checking infrastructure and advising residents to be ready for aftershocks. A new investigative claim is raising eyebrows in Washington that a hidden, coordinated command structure inside the federal government quietly directs inspectors general. The allegation is that this shadow layer can steer or stall oversight in politically sensitive cases. So far, the story is driven by whistleblower statements and commentary, but if Congress takes it up, it could trigger significant oversight hearings. A 2007 clip of then-Speaker Nancy Pelosi is circulating again, showing her insisting illegal immigrants should not receive government health care benefits. Conservatives are replaying the video as proof that Democratic leaders once agreed with stricter limits on public benefits. Today's party line is far more permissive, and the contrast is being used to highlight how far the immigration debate has shifted. Point. U.S. Treasuries are quietly having one of their strongest years since 2020. Benchmarks show total returns around 6% or more, outpacing many other developed world bond markets as investors pile back into government debt after years of rate shocks. For Washington, the rally helps finance huge deficits. For savers, it signals that safe assets are finally paying again. Space weather watchers are on alert after detecting Type 2 and Type 4 radio signatures that suggest a large, fast coronal mass ejection headed toward Earth. If the CME hits squarely, it could trigger strong geomagnetic storms, disrupt HF radio and GPS, and produce vivid auroras at lower latitudes. Power grid operators and satellite firms are monitoring forecasts closely over the next 24 to 48 hours. A powerful Thanksgiving video from Angel Families features parents and relatives who lost loved ones to crimes tied to illegal immigration or fentanyl. In it, they thank President Trump personally for tougher border policies and for publicly honoring their children's names. The emotional messages are being shared widely in conservative circles as a rebuke to prior administrations' handling of the border crisis. Television doctor and former Senate candidate Mehmet Oz is warning that massive fraud in Minnesota's social services system could hammer Medicaid budgets. Referring to the Somali-linked Feeding Our Future scandal and related schemes, he argues that if similar abuse is happening in healthcare programs, the hit to taxpayers could be enormous. State officials say they're tightening audits, but whistleblowers claim problems go back years. The Department of Homeland Security is pushing back on a Democratic lawmaker's claim that she was pepper sprayed by ICE officers during a protest. DHS says body camera and surveillance footage show officers using crowd control tactics nearby, but not directly targeting her. The incident is now a political flashpoint, with the left accusing ICE of brutality and the right accusing critics of staging drama for the cameras. Dramatic new video shows a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter sniper disabling the engines of a narco go-fast boat in the eastern Pacific. The interdiction led to the seizure of more than 20,000 pounds of cocaine in a single operation, part of a broader campaign against cartel trafficking lanes. Officials say the bust represents millions of potential doses kept off U.S. streets. Point. In Indiana, President Trump is publicly blasting fellow Republicans who refuse to back his preferred congressional map. He says lawmakers who vote against the plan are helping Democrats and should be primaried out of office. Trump is again calling out former CIA Director John Brennan, asking whether he'll finally get his just desserts over his role in Russiagate and other controversies. So far, Brennan has not been charged with any crimes and defends his tenure as lawful. But among Trump's base, he remains a symbol of what they view as a politicized intelligence community that interfered in domestic politics. Point. The State Department has issued new guidance telling consular officers to deny visas to applicants whose work involves fact-checking, content moderation, trust and safety, or similar roles seen as censoring Americans. The policy is part of a broader push against what the administration calls digital speech control. Critics warn it politicizes visa decisions and could backfire on U.S. tech and media workers abroad. Russian forces have carried out large-scale missile and drone strikes on Ukraine's military and energy infrastructure overnight. Early reports describe hits on power plants, substations, and rail hubs, once again plunging cities into rolling blackouts as winter sets in. Kyiv says its air defenses intercepted many of the incoming weapons, but warns that stockpiles of interceptors are under strain. Point. The Justice Department is asking a federal appeals court to dismiss a whistleblower lawsuit alleging serious problems in a Pfizer COVID vaccine trial. Attorneys for whistleblower Brooke Jackson say leaked FDA communications show regulators knew about safety and data issues, including deaths, but pressed forward anyway. Department of Justice argues the case lacks the legal basis to proceed, a move critics call an attempt to shield Big Pharma from scrutiny. A new report says the European Union quietly pumped over $542 million into 4 large NGOs tied to U.S. development work: Save the Children, DAI, Catholic Relief Services, and Mercy Corps. Projects reportedly range from migrant programs to election-related initiatives. Critics call it political interference using European taxpayers' money. Point. Canada's medical assistance in dying program is under renewed fire, as estimates suggest total deaths since legalization may now be approaching 100,000. Official federal reports confirm tens of thousands of MAID cases and double-digit annual growth. Supporters say it offers relief from unbearable suffering. Opponents warn that a right to die is sliding into quiet pressure on the elderly, disabled, and poor. An essay circulating under the title Color Revolution Part 2 claims the CIA is facing internal purges and a crisis of legitimacy after years of alleged involvement in domestic political manipulation. The author argues that the only path to national recovery is to dismantle entrenched security state networks and rebuild accountable intelligence structures. Mainstream outlets dismiss the piece as conspiratorial, but it is gaining traction in dissident circles. Qatar's prime minister says the Gaza truce cannot be considered a real ceasefire until Israeli forces fully withdraw and normal life returns to the Strip. Speaking at a major diplomatic forum, he called the situation a critical moment and urged all sides to move to the next phase of the U.S.-brokered peace plan. Mediators warn that without progress on withdrawal and reconstruction, the pause in fighting could collapse. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services has announced a new vetting center aimed at tightening screening for terrorists, criminal aliens, and immigration fraud. Based in Atlanta, the unit will centralize background checks and data analysis for certain applications. Supporters say it's long overdue. Critics worry it could expand secret watch lists and make it harder for legitimate applicants to clear the system. Point. At the Department of Health and Human Services, officials have quietly changed the nameplate on former Assistant Secretary Rachel Levine's official portrait back to Richard Levine, Levine's birth name. The move has set off a firestorm, with critics calling it a deliberate insult to a transgender official and supporters arguing it reflects biological reality. HHS has not fully explained who ordered the change or why now. The Trump administration is dramatically tightening access to work permits for asylum seekers and other migrants with humanitarian status. New rules cut permit validity from 5 years down to about 18 months and add stricter eligibility checks. The White House says it's closing loopholes that encouraged abuse. Point. U.S. Border Patrol is rolling out a new $5,000 apprehension fee for illegal immigrants age 14 and up who are caught entering or living in the country without inspection. The fee, created in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, applies regardless of how long someone has been in the U.S. or where they were stopped. Supporters say it's a needed deterrent. On the economic front, Trump is touting what he calls an affordability crusade, arguing that Americans want simple, low-cost, tiny trucks, not expensive, software-laden electric vehicles that feel like computers on wheels. He's pressuring automakers to build smaller, cheaper models in the U.S. and warning that heavy regulation and EV mandates are pricing working families out of the new car market. A new watchdog report on Afghanistan reconstruction says billions of dollars in U.S.-funded weapons and gear left behind after the 2021 withdrawal now form the core of the Taliban's military. The tally includes hundreds of thousands of firearms, vehicles, and other equipment that fell into Taliban hands as the old government collapsed. For many Americans, it confirms their worst fears about how the war ended and the risks it created. Speaking at the Reagan National Defense Forum, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth promised that the days of cartel narco-terrorists operating freely in the Western Hemisphere are over. He says the U.S. is treating the big cartels like foreign terror organizations, authorizing strikes on drug-laden vessels and targeting their finances. The message is clear. The administration wants Americans to know it is willing to use hard power against the drug trade. Hegseth also pledged to restore unquestioned U.S. military dominance in the Western Hemisphere, saying peace comes only through strength. He pointed to expanded joint exercises, naval patrols, and intelligence sharing with regional partners. Critics worry the posture risks escalation, but supporters argue that after years of drift, Washington is finally reasserting control in its own backyard. In North Carolina, a previously deported illegal immigrant is charged in a knife attack on a passenger aboard a train. Local authorities say the suspect had a prior removal order, but re-entered the country and slipped through the system. The case is now fueling fresh calls from border security advocates for tougher interior enforcement and an end to so-called sanctuary practices. Point. In Texas, a new law has taken effect allowing ivermectin to be sold over the counter without a prescription. Pharmacists will keep the drug behind the counter, but adults can now request it directly. Backers say it's about medical freedom. Many doctors and federal regulators warn improper use can be dangerous and stress that the drug is not approved for COVID-19 treatment. A magnitude 7.0 earthquake has struck in remote wilderness near the Alaska-Canada border, north of Yakutat. The USGS reports shaking felt across parts of Alaska, but early indications show no tsunami threat and limited structural damage due to the area's low population. Emergency officials are still checking infrastructure and advising residents to be ready for aftershocks. A new investigative claim is raising eyebrows in Washington that a hidden, coordinated command structure inside the federal government quietly directs inspectors general. The allegation is that this shadow layer can steer or stall oversight in politically sensitive cases. So far, the story is driven by whistleblower statements and commentary, but if Congress takes it up, it could trigger significant oversight hearings. A 2007 clip of then-Speaker Nancy Pelosi is circulating again, showing her insisting illegal immigrants should not receive government health care benefits. Conservatives are replaying the video as proof that Democratic leaders once agreed with stricter limits on public benefits. Today's party line is far more permissive, and the contrast is being used to highlight how far the immigration debate has shifted. Point. U.S. Treasuries are quietly having one of their strongest years since 2020. Benchmarks show total returns around 6% or more, outpacing many other developed world bond markets as investors pile back into government debt after years of rate shocks. For Washington, the rally helps finance huge deficits. For savers, it signals that safe assets are finally paying again. Space weather watchers are on alert after detecting Type 2 and Type 4 radio signatures that suggest a large, fast coronal mass ejection headed toward Earth. If the CME hits squarely, it could trigger strong geomagnetic storms, disrupt HF radio and GPS, and produce vivid auroras at lower latitudes. Power grid operators and satellite firms are monitoring forecasts closely over the next 24 to 48 hours. A powerful Thanksgiving video from Angel Families features parents and relatives who lost loved ones to crimes tied to illegal immigration or fentanyl. In it, they thank President Trump personally for tougher border policies and for publicly honoring their children's names. The emotional messages are being shared widely in conservative circles as a rebuke to prior administrations' handling of the border crisis. Television doctor and former Senate candidate Mehmet Oz is warning that massive fraud in Minnesota's social services system could hammer Medicaid budgets. Referring to the Somali-linked Feeding Our Future scandal and related schemes, he argues that if similar abuse is happening in healthcare programs, the hit to taxpayers could be enormous. State officials say they're tightening audits, but whistleblowers claim problems go back years. The Department of Homeland Security is pushing back on a Democratic lawmaker's claim that she was pepper-sprayed by ICE officers during a protest. DHS says body camera and surveillance footage show officers using crowd control tactics nearby, but not directly targeting her. The incident is now a political flashpoint, with the left accusing ICE of brutality and the right accusing critics of staging drama for the cameras. Dramatic new video shows a U.S. Coast Guard helicopter sniper disabling the engines of a narco go-fast boat in the eastern Pacific. The interdiction led to the seizure of more than 20,000 pounds of cocaine in a single operation, part of a broader campaign against cartel trafficking lanes. Officials say the bust represents millions of potential doses kept off U.S. streets. Point. In Indiana, President Trump is publicly blasting fellow Republicans who refuse to back his preferred congressional map. He says lawmakers who vote against the plan are helping Democrats and should be primaried out of office. Trump is again calling out former CIA Director John Brennan, asking whether he'll finally get his just desserts over his role in Russiagate and other controversies. So far, Brennan has not been charged with any crimes and defends his tenure as lawful. But among Trump's base, he remains a symbol of what they view as a politicized intelligence community that interfered in domestic politics. Point. The State Department has issued new guidance telling consular officers to deny visas to applicants whose work involves fact-checking, content moderation, trust and safety, or similar roles seen as censoring Americans. The policy is part of a broader push against what the administration calls digital speech control. Critics warn it politicizes visa decisions and could backfire on U.S. tech and media workers abroad. Russian forces have carried out large-scale missile and drone strikes on Ukraine's military and energy infrastructure overnight. Early reports describe hits on power plants, substations, and rail hubs, once again plunging cities into rolling blackouts as winter sets in. Kyiv says its air defenses intercepted many of the incoming weapons, but warns that stockpiles of interceptors are under strain. Point. The Justice Department is asking a federal appeals court to dismiss a whistleblower lawsuit alleging serious problems in a Pfizer COVID vaccine trial. Attorneys for whistleblower Brooke Jackson say leaked FDA communications show regulators knew about safety and data issues, including deaths, but pressed forward anyway. Department of Justice argues the case lacks the legal basis to proceed, a move critics call an attempt to shield Big Pharma from scrutiny. A new report says the European Union quietly pumped over $542 million into 4 large NGOs tied to U.S. development work. Save the Children, DAI, Catholic Relief. All reports can be found on Q Research or Qnotables.com. Notables do not equal endorsements. We are researchers who deal in open source information, stay alert, reasoned argument, stay informed, and never hand your thinking over to anyone on a screen, including me. God bless you, God bless our troops, and God bless the United States of America. Good night. That's all for tonight. Stay alert.